listening to Jai Long, and this is Make Your Break. Whether you're a big-hearted creative or an aspiring entrepreneur, let's take action on your dreams, reconnecting you with your why and giving you the how. I'm here to dish out actionable mindset tips and fun industry secrets to help you blow up your biz. From eye-opening reality checks to motivational gold, no two episodes are ever the same. So tune in weekly, skip the FOMO, and let's dive into the deep together. Hey, welcome back to the show. Today, I am actually getting interviewed by one of my favorite business coaches, Kaylene Langford, and she is the founder and podcast host over at Startup Creative. She has a podcast called Startup Creative. It's amazing. She shares lots of real life and raw startup stories from the front line of successful businesses. And she really makes you feel empowered and gives you the knowledge that you need to sort of manage a business and fall back in love with the opportunities and things that we have in our lives. So having her interview me was a big deal. I've actually been on a podcast a few different times, and I'd love to share this interview with you because I talk more about my business, the back end of my business, but also like pivoting, thinking about how we need to change a lot in our businesses, how we need to move and not have a fixed mindset, and a lot of those other things that come along with it. Now, for me, sometimes I feel a little bit self-conscious, like just sharing, another interview of myself being interviewed instead of me actually interviewing somebody. But I do feel like it brings a lot of value. And I do feel like I don't share too many stories. And I think there's so much, I don't know. When you listen to someone that's done a lot of things and perhaps done the things that you want to do in your career, I do feel like there's so much inspiration because from that, I know for myself, when I listen to the people that are a couple of steps ahead of me, it makes me feel like I can go and do the thing, or I can basically do anything, So for me, it's always so valuable when I hear from those people. And so I'm hoping for myself, I share these things in that light. I'm hoping that it brings some inspiration to you today, and it makes you think a little bit about your business, where it's at right now. How can you pivot? Is it on the right track? How big are your goals? What goals do you have this year? Are they going to be different next year? Like, what are you doing this year to make sure it is different next year? And all the things in between. So Kaylene, she's a good friend of mine. She is just an all-around all-star, amazing human being. And I'm always excited when she jumps in and actually asks me some really good thought-provoking questions, and she dives right into them. So I know you're in for a treat today. So once again, thank you very much for listening to the podcast. Hey, if you haven't left a review yet, there's a link below right here where you can leave a review for the podcast. Now, I read them every single day. Now, let me have a look at them right now. I read them. The reason being is because sometimes I'm just working here, by myself, and it can be really hard to sometimes feel like you're doing the right thing, you're going in the right direction, like whatever it is. So here's one here. This one's from Daddy Bruno. Can't get enough of you and your woke brain, my dude. So happy I found your podcast, and I'm doing my best to start my own creative business. Got my first wedding video shoot in 3 weeks, and after that, I'm going to go full time into creating my portfolio. So all the best, brother. Thank you so much for that review. I really do appreciate it, and I read them every single day. So if you do want to leave me a review, if this podcast has helped you in some way, please do. Otherwise, let's get into today's interview.
Hello and welcome back to the podcast, Jai Long. How are you?
Welcome. I'm good. How are you?
Yeah. Who's running this podcast?
I don't know. Chaos straight away.
It's weird to be on the other side of it, isn't it? Sometimes
it is.
Like, how do we get? But I feel like that's also what makes our episodes so fun, is that they're synergy of bouncing and getting ideas. But we haven't had you on the podcast since I think we figured it out. It was before the pandemic. So I'm really excited to dive in because, as always, you're taking leaps and bounds. And I'm really keen to jump into some questions about how you've been going and what you've been up to. So tell us a little bit maybe about what your business looks like now post-pandemic, but also maybe if you can think back to early 2020 days, what was that like for you? Did you have fear or?
Well, early 2020 was an interesting and very pivotal part of my business because it was talking about pivotable, I actually pivoted so much during that time. And I think that was really important for me, and especially just to grow. And I think a lot of us went through that. So I don't think I'm a stranger to pivoting. But my business is very different now, because one reason being is because I was able to really expand my business during the pandemic, because everyone else gets scared, right? And so one of the things we do as creatives is we always complain that there's too many people in the market, too much competition, it's saturated, too many people doing everything. But the second everything stops, everyone stops as well, because we're kind of like, it's like herd mentality, or we are, the way that we work is we all like to fit in with everybody else. So if you just simply stand out, which, that's exactly what I did. I did the opposite to everyone else. So while everyone's contracting, I just expanded as much as I could. And then I knew it was the golden opportunity for me to like take my business to another level. And so it all worked out, and it's a lot of luck in there as well. You know what I mean? Like, it's not like I'm a genius that it just worked out, but it was like, follow your gut instinct and then go for it regardless of how scared you are at the time.
It's interesting because I was reading this research recently about imposter syndrome and how it's potentially a coping strategy. So when you talk about that herd mentality, it's like when we exist as tribes and community as humans, staying in community and having community is vital to who we are and how do we exist and thrive. But at the same time, the imposter syndrome feeling of like, I couldn't possibly leave my tribe or do something different existed or, evolved because it meant that we stayed in community. So there was, we were stronger together. There was less competition, all these things. And so now it's like, navigating that perhaps maybe it served us to not leave community in, those kind of hunter-gatherer days. But then how do we determine now if it's a real threat or, just a past learnt
something to keep us playing pretty small.
Yeah. And so I'm interested when you say like, everyone else is, in that fear and you expanded. Where did you, like, what was your, I guess, was that something, I know you do a lot of education yourself. Yeah. But was that always a way in which you operated, or did you learn, or, what kind of backed you on that choice?
Yeah, I think it's actually from when I was younger. I had like a mentor, which was one of my best friend's dads, and he actually told me that little tip. And it was like, he said it in the investing sense. He's like, man, when everybody's scared and they don't want to buy property or something, that's when you need to do it. Or if they don't want to buy shares, whatever, that's when you need to do it. And then when everyone's trying to buy it, that's when you sell. So it's kind of that mentality. And when I realized like there was a big thing going on and everyone was like trying to stop or fire their staff or do anything else, I was like, wow, there's less competition, which is usually the biggest problem, which means now if I can somehow serve people at that higher level, there's less people, shoulder to shoulder to me. Yeah, so for me, I think it's the way I think for sure. Like I've always done everything the opposite to someone. I mean, here's a good example. When I started my wedding photography business, I actually I went to a workshop and I looked up to these photographers and they're amazing people. And I said, hey, should I name my wedding photography business like Jai Long Photography, or should I name it something different? Now they told me that, no, you should name it your name, because right now the trends are naming it your name will create a deeper connection. And then that way you can sort of stand out and it'll be really good. And I knew they were industry leaders. So I did the opposite to what they said, because I knew they were going to impact everyone and they're going to spread that message to everyone. So the easy way to stand out was just take on their advice, listen to it, do the exact opposite. And then I stood out. So it's easy to do that by just seeing what the trends are, what people are doing, and do the opposite to what everyone's doing.
You're pretty much telling everyone who follows you to not listen to your advice.
Yeah. I actually say that in my 6-figure business plan. I'm like, I'm giving you this advice right now. If you're listening to it, work out how to do the opposite to what I'm saying right now, because a lot of people are going to do this, right?
Yeah.
So that's the thing. I'm not just teaching them to do what I say. I'm teaching them how to self-learn and work out the hacks themselves.
Yeah. And I think that's it. Yeah. It's like, put your own spin on it, or that gut feeling that you mentioned. It's interesting because I had clients in New York, and I think it was towards the end of 2021, and Manhattan was empty, and all of these offices had been abandoned, and people weren't returning to work, and they went in and set up a studio and completely renovated it and did all this stuff, and it was unheard of prices of affordability in Manhattan.
It's a once in a lifetime opportunity for them.
Yeah, and I think post pandemic, as we're coming out of that, it's the blank slate of like, now this is where the creatives can rise and set the tone or recreate and almost like a dead city that gets to go in and plant new seeds, which is exciting and not always easy.
One thing, not many people see very far into the future. Like I've realized that, like we find it really hard to see past 2 weeks or 3 weeks. So a lot of times because we're in survive mode, we deal with whatever's in front of us, but we can't see past that. And so I've noticed it's so short on how far people's future plans are. For an example, is like just at the end of the pandemic, I bought an office space because I was like, oh, they're so cheap right now. No one's buying them. Everyone told me I was mad. Man, no one wants offices. Everyone works from home now. I'm like, they do this week, but they're going to come back to work and they want a space as they grow, right? And I think it was like maybe 1 month later, after I bought it and everything, I talked to the real estate agent and we were looking at something else for my partner. And they're like, man, literally, everyone's trying to get office blocks right now. They're skyrocketing in prices. And it was 1 month difference. I was like, how can not anyone see 1 month ahead? You know what I mean? And we just don't, because we're in survive mode. So we're just trying to survive in the moment. And that's pretty much where most of us are.
Yeah. And I think that's like a key to success, right? Is like, how do you always be thinking, I guess it's like that zooming out and looking for the bigger picture rather than reactionary to,
being on that micro.
Yeah. And I guess like there's this other interest. I'm keen to get to like that real moment of you being like, cool, because I think there's ways in which you're like, yeah, and then I did this. But it's like, did you, when, obviously taking that risk of being like, yep, I'm going to do this differently and I'm going to expand. I think natural leaders, evolve through times of crisis because not everyone's, got it in them to regulate that emotional space and, help to guide people through, which is just, personalities that evolve like that, I guess. But what was, did you have the resources or did you have a plan or
It's a really good question. Yeah. Well, I guess the main thing is there was no plan. There was definitely no resources. And I was scared, like really, really scared, because it was like, you don't know if something's going to work out. And so I sort of work out what's the worst case scenario. In the worst case scenario, I'm going to lose everything. And then I think about, if I do nothing, what's the worst case scenario? Well, I'll lose everything. And then I'm like, well, if I do nothing, what's the best case scenario? Well, nothing. And then I think about, well, if I just take a chance on myself, what's the best case scenario? Well, you could actually come out on top if you made something happen. Don't know how, there's no plan. And you never need to know how, you just need to know the goal, because then if you're resourceful, you can always work out how. But you're right with, never knowing these things. Like, I don't know if many people notice, but during the pandemic and during downturns, like more billionaires make more billionaires, more billions, more people become minted millionaires during a time of crisis than any other time. And it's because it does bring up the people that are like, this is my opportunity, this is what I needed. And it's no longer an even playing field, because everybody that was, they didn't work on their mindset, they didn't level up, they didn't know business, they didn't work on their business, they didn't have a strategy, they didn't have goals, they were sort of just making it. All those weak hands lose the game really quick. And then the people that were in it and working regardless if they got paid or not, then they come in front because they did it, because they do it because they didn't get, doesn't matter if they get paid or what the result is. So I do see the big difference happens in those times, and a lot of people see it, and a lot of people think it's very unfair. And I fully understand it, and I think it's unfair in a lot of ways for sure. But it's just that we're all human and we all think differently, and we need to lean into our own superpowers, trust ourselves.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's like, regardless of whether it's, a income goal or whatever, it's, people can thrive when there's, when they step into it. And I think nothing comes from a comfort zone, and it's really easy to get caught up in the fear and the noise outside and being pulled in all the different directions of people's attention and narratives they want you to follow and boxes they want you to fit into. And I guess it kind of jumps us to that mindset conversation around, because it really is, I think about it now, it's like the successful people that I know and the times where I've, had those breakthroughs, it's when you feel the fear, but you're doing it anyway. And it's the right level of fear that you're able to push through and go, there could be something here. I'm just going to, give this a good hard crack. But it's like,
definitely,
where's your mindset kind of developed into being able to have that risk taking? And then, where have you kind of built those skill sets, and how do you, keep cultivating them and refining them and keeping them healthy?
I think like a lot of people, like, me sharing the story of expanding just now, like people think I don't get scared, but man, I'm fucking scared all the time. Like I'm scared this week because I don't have enough money to make things happen. Like that's just the way that we work. But I think, like growing up, right?
Can we stop there for a second? Because I think that's really interesting. And I think people would like to hear that from you, because it's like, you have a very confident presence and, you've got a lot going on. But what is that moment of fear for you? And like, I know we'll probably get to it, but like you do take big risks. So therefore there's big fear in that.
Big fear.
But what does fear look like for you? What is that, that process? Are you up at night? Are you worrying? Are you problem solving? Are you talking to people? What's going on for you in that moment?
It is real interesting because I think about this a lot, and sometimes I feel like I'm just not, I don't know, like I don't have empathy for myself or something, but I sit in fear and I think about it and I'm like, why aren't I losing sleep? Or why aren't I more scared about this? Or why aren't I feeling the feels that I feel like a lot of people would feel in this situation? But I have this sort of mechanism of like, whenever I do get scared about anything, I think about literally inwards. I think about myself, and then I think, do I have the ability to pull myself through a situation? Like if it gets bad, and it gets bad all the time. Trust me. Like, we just had like a big launch and I spent too much money and there wasn't enough cash flow. So I had to make some money last week to keep payroll going and just like little things like that. And that happens all the time. And I never actually get scared of it, because the way that I see it is like, Jai, you made this problem, you made the bed, you have to sleep in it. So you chose this life. What's the solution? So I never think about the problem, because I know that's going to waste too much of my energy and time, because I can sit here all day long and go like, I can't believe I made that mistake and there's a problem and I shouldn't have done it. And I'm told myself I was scared and I should have listened to myself. But the more energy I give that, the less progress that I have. And progress for me is happiness. So I just go like, I know I made a mistake. I fully accept it. And I'm going to try my best not to do that again. And I'm going to try something else. And so, for me, it's very much like keeping my blinkers on for myself and just telling myself, no, you've got this, man. Like keep trusting yourself. Keep trusting yourself.
I think that's really nice to hear. And it's like the realities of, it's always problem solving in a business, right? It's like everything is data and information and feedback of how you can keep refining it and getting better and learning, like you learn the most from your mistakes, right?
Exactly.
But it's like, do you ever get tired of that needing to, or is there an end goal or a vision or something you're aspiring to, or, is that part of, for you to being on that exciting journey of like, what's next? Or does it ever get exhausting? You have those days? Because I think a lot of people, I coming off the back of COVID the other week was like kind of in this funk of I can't get my brain working, and ended up just being like, you know what? I just don't feel like being inspiring today. And that's
totally.
Okay.
I think the big misconception that people have is they think people like yourself and myself just think every single day is amazing and we love every aspect of our job and every aspect of business. But fuck, man, so many times it's so hard to get up and do something and keep going through when things are not working out, and keep paying for things that you can't even afford stuff for yourself, and keep doing all these things, right? But myself and yourself didn't sign up to this because it's easy. And if we did do that, we probably would have got a job at Woolworths or something, because that's, to me, probably pretty easy. But I love progress. And so even though a lot of the times it's hard, I know if I just wake up and I just take one small step, I only have to do one small thing, and then I can go home and go watch Netflix. There's no problem. But if I do one small thing, that's the way that I measure my success, right? For instance, if I was going to do nothing today, then I'm like, okay, well, maybe I should just do one post on social media because I know today is productive and I can give myself the grace. It doesn't matter if I didn't take over the world today. But yeah, man, there's so many things that we have in our day-to-day lives, so many things that we are not excited about, we don't love, but we got to do it anyway. And that's what we chose. And then when we look back, we're always glad that we did it, right?
And I think, yeah, absolutely. Like there's definitely days and times. And I think something that I'm constantly working on for myself and my clients is this, how do we keep refining? Question I keep asking myself is like, what do I love to do? What lights me up? What do I want to be doing? And keep refining my business. So they're, you know, whether you're outsourcing
on that path
or, you know, that you can do those things that you love and that you're aligned to. And I think like just, when you were saying that around you get up every day and that's your challenge, that's what you signed up for, it just made me think then of like, you know what, maybe not everyone wants that or
they don't.
What I have. And
they definitely don't.
Okay. You've got to find, just because, you've seen this person and they're inspiring you or exciting you, it's like, don't choose our paths, choose yours and what that lights you up. Because I think it was just really clear to me that that's your life, like your specific journey and your life path.
And it's very specific, huh?
And it's specific to you and your personality and how you've evolved and your mindset and your life experiences. And it's not meant for anyone else. And the reason you can get up and do it every day is because it's yours. You know, you're designing your life in that.
Yeah. And I think it's so empowering to sort of live your life like that. Like, I think a lot of the times, like sometimes people say like, Jai, and people ask me all this time, I don't know why, they say, Jai, when's enough? And what people don't realize is the only time someone says enough is when they're burnt out, they're not in line with their goals, they're going in circles, like they're feeling overwhelmed, that they don't have clarity, and they say enough is enough. And that's the way that they say it. But someone that's in line with their goals, no matter how hard it is, and if they feel like they're getting progress, they'll never say that because we never laugh enough. We never learn enough. We never love enough. We never have enough experiences. We never get on enough podcasts. I never, you know, there is never a situation in my life where I'm like, that's enough. You know, lucky I'm like, you know, halfway through school, have I learned enough? That's it. You know, so we always want to grow and we always want to evolve. And so enough is enough is really like a concept coming out of like fear and also just like being out of line of your goals, because enough is never enough if you want progress and happiness.
I almost think that person is, you know, the enough is enough question is, it's like they're being triggered by not being able to keep up. But I think that's also the beauty of it, right? Is like, it's never going to be enough for you, because not that it needs to be enough, but it's like, you're always going to keep challenging and growing and inspiring because that's your life path. And you've found a business that aligns with that and a model and a lifestyle. And it's like if you find yourself going, you know, asking somebody else to slow down so you can keep up pretty much, or you're, getting to enough, it's like you're actually striving for the wrong thing. You'll never hit it. You'll never get it because you're aiming at the wrong target. You're aiming at Jai's target, and that's Jai's target.
Well, and I guess maybe there's a perception that like once you hit a certain milestone, once you hit $1 million, once you go to 5 countries, once you get married, you know, like we always think there's a milestone. Then when we hit that, then that's enough. But there's not one time, like for me right now with all the achievements that I've had, and I know you with all your achievements that you had, like, okay, you've written a book, right? Is that enough? Will you ever write a book again?
Yeah, definitely. I've got a couple more up my sleeve.
Why though? You've already written the book, right? And so we just don't do that as humans. We don't just go like, oh, I wrote a book and that's it. Like I'm going to talk about that for 20 years. We're going, well, I did that thing. That was in the past. And that helped me evolve and think differently and then work out a better strategy in a better way. And actually, I'm excited to do it all over again because I know I can do better. And that's the way that we think.
Absolutely. And I think, it's really, that's so clear, like for me too, because I'm just like, these are my goals. And then, you know, every time you reach a new goal, it's actually, you learn more and you're like, oh, what else can I teach? Or how can I teach that better or whatever? Or, you know, you'll always keep, I remember someone telling me really early on, I was interviewing them for my magazine and I said, oh, what's the hardest part about being in business is like, there's never an end. Like there's never a CEO position to get to and you've made it, you know, of like, I was a CEO of this company. Now I'm going to jump to the next one. So
It's all a continuum.
Yeah, but it's like, it becomes your life journey when you're doing what you love, you know?
Well, just to quickly throw something in there, like on that same strategy and that same thought process, like you shouldn't have the same goals every year. You know, so last year you had a goal, and I remember you're like, I want to release a book. And then that's no longer your goal this year because you did that last year. This year, maybe you're going to release a couple of books or you're going to do something different, right? So like I remember talking to you and openly saying my goal in 2020, and I was like, don't know how I'm going to do this, but I want to be a millionaire. I want to make $1 million, my first million. Now that goal was in 2020. And now it's 2022. It better not be the same goal for me. Like I've already hit it. I'm already moving on and I'm doing something else. So like a lot of us, we get attached to a goal and we think once that goal's done, that's the big thing. But man, your goal and your story's got to evolve and change every year to keep you excited.
Yeah, I was actually teaching this morning of this. People often be like, how do you get up? How do you get motivated? How do you keep working in the direction of, you know, these dreams and the goals? And there's this research that shows 3 elements to activating motivation, really. And it's when your goals and your life and what you're doing, you feel like you have autonomy over. So you get to design what you work on and choose. And that's why I think sometimes, because we're running our own businesses, even though things might be hard, they're still ours. It's our businesses and we get to do them our way. It's not someone saying, sit
Which
down
is so cool.
Do it this way. You know, and you get to work your hours and you have the autonomy. There's purpose to what you do. You feel like there's a sense of purpose and there's the right amount of challenge. And if the challenge is too high, then you will, you know, you've set the bar too high. You'll actually, you try to go too big too soon. You'll kick yourself out of the even attempting cycle. Whereas if you have those things, enough of a challenge that it excites you to grow and expand, then you'll be like, oh, I nearly got it. You know, it's like, So I think I like that
so much.
It's like you look at that, then it's like you don't need to sit down and have this huge morning routine and, you know, super fit and this and that and look at what everyone else is doing and, you know, copy their routines because that's how they're motivated. It's actually those 3 things that you have complete control over. And I guess, again, back to that point around autonomy is if it's not your goal you're aiming towards and you're copying.
Oh, man, it becomes so fucking hard.
Yeah.
The second that you're working towards someone else's goal like that, you know, and I think about it in my life, like, you know, maybe people tell me to slow down or they want me to slow down and I understand that, but I don't look at someone, I don't actually run on someone else's goals. So I don't get jealous or nervous or compare myself. I don't look at, like, let's just say like Gary Vee, for instance. I don't look at him and go, oh man, he's so much further. Like I wish he would slow down so I could catch up, you know, because if I tried to reach his goals, man, it'd just be overwhelming for me. It'd be insane. You know?
Yeah. And maybe one day you'll be, you know, well, I'm sure one day if that's something you're aspiring to, they've shown you a path, but when you're ready, you'll be at that level, you know. And I think that's the thing I've learned, and I still, you know, think about it when people talk about me having a book, is like it wasn't like, oh my God, I've got a book, like I've got a book deal. It was like by the time I got my book deal, I was like, yeah, cool.
It makes sense.
Content in like it's
I work towards it.
A challenge, you know. Yeah. I actually read this quote the other day that said, it's this guy, Ken Honda, who he's this book, which is what made me reach out to you about money. And I think it's called Happy Money. And the quote that he said was, success doesn't rid us of doubt. And thinking to that now around how there's always that fear. And always, I think something you said then about like, oh, once I get here, once I get there, then, you know, it's like success doesn't have an end point. And I think it's like success is, being in alignment with who you are, right? I don't know, what's your version of success?
My success is my definition is the willingness to do and fail, because that for me keeps me in the sense of like, if something's worth doing, like, and then if I actually fail on that thing, it means that I'm still so successful because at least I gave myself a chance and I tried it. So it's not about like actually winning the thing. It's about being in the game, if that makes sense.
Hey, I'm sure we've talked about this on other podcasts, but I'm so interested. This is like a therapy session.
Yeah, let's go.
But like, where is your willingness or your ease with failing come from? Why are you so okay with failing?
Well, it's because I've been the underdog my whole life. Like, growing up with no money, and all those things means I don't feel like I deserve anything. I have no attachment to it. I don't have an ego to it. It's not part of my identity. So for success for me, it's none of those things, which means it's easy for me to let go and lose because it's not part of my story. So I think a lot of us, we get so hung up on like, we need to be successful, or we need to have things, or we need to have, achievements and all these things. And maybe that comes from school. Maybe this from comparing ourselves to childhood friends or like whatever it is. But for me, I'm just like, man, I'm still the underdog and I'm still running like the underdog. Like I am, I'm hungry and I'm ready and I'm doing the thing and I'm tripping over and I'm falling over and I'm failing all the time. But I'm like, well, that's just me though. I don't have anything to lose. So I still feel like I have nothing to lose.
Yeah, is that even as you grow and like you've got to make payroll and you're like building a house right now and you've bought an office space and who knows what else you're doing, but like,
I still got nothing to lose.
Yeah,
like I'm not attached to any of those things.
Yeah, and I think it's like then I guess like also that point of like the more, I don't know if you feel like this, but around like being a teacher in the space of helping other people achieve and stuff like that, is that the fear of like losing that or, the pressure, I guess, of that as well?
Not for me. I think because I'm so myself and I teach what I do. That's why people love to learn from me, because they're like, oh, how did I do that? And then fail and then still keep going. That's kind of interesting. So the reason why people come to me is not because I have anything motivational to say, but they see what I do and go, that's pretty motivational.
Mm-hmm. How do you think people can cultivate the ability to take that risk and reduce the emotional like identity or fear of failure?
A lot of it is we have to work on ourselves and we have to realize that we have to let go of that ego. Ego is the biggest thing, because if we are tied to, for instance, like if I just say I released a book and then no one bought it. So if I attach my ego to that one thing, I'm like, okay, so that's me basically. And now I'm no longer who I am because I put myself out there and that didn't work. And then I feel like people are judging me for that one project. But the way I see it is like, oh no, I'm me. And then I do projects all the time. And if they don't work out, like I don't care. I'm still me. If I lose all my money, I still got my mind. I still remember everything. I know my capabilities. So I think we need to let go of associating ourselves to our achievements or to our success or to whatever, So I don't want anyone to ever go like, oh yeah, Jai, like, oh yeah, he's got lots of money, he's successful. Like I don't want that to be my story, because it's not my story actually. You know what I mean? So it's separating us actual feelings and ego, and just realizing like you can have confidence without ego because they're not joined together. You need to be confident in yourself. And then that means you confidently can fail and you confidently can do a project and it doesn't work out, or it does work out. You're confident in that.
I love that. It reminds me actually, a couple of weekends ago, I was coming off the back of COVID, and then I was like, I've really pushed myself, and then I was like, okay, you actually need to stop. You're going to crack again, and you'll just end up back, bedridden, and time to actually stop and rest. And was spending a lot of time being like, how am I, what am I going to do next in my business? I've got all this time to sit and be still. Like, what do I want to do? And, for a moment there, I was just like, I will never be able to have a proper like conversation or be a coach again, because my brain just felt like the wires were unplugged. And so I had to really face like, what if all of this was stripped away? Or, what, now that it is feeling like there's, a blank canvas, what do you want to put back on? Which also brings me into this conversation around money that has been happening a lot. So like, for me, it's like, activating and keeping your business alive and, cash flow and generating work and what's next. And it was like, I guess I was like in this like kind of panic mode about it of like, I don't know what, like you've been out of the game for a few weeks and, then you're questioning whether what you do is even relevant and all this stuff. Anyway, then I had this experience. I was finally kind of getting to this place of being like, yeah, cool. And then I woke up on Saturday morning and I was like literally walking down to the markets with my partner and was like, yeah, life is good. I feel like I'm getting some clarity. I know what direction I'm going to go in. And then I figured out, I don't know, this weird things happen, but my bank card had been taken from a third-party app and someone had charged hundreds of dollars to it overnight. And it was this real, there was panic and there was anxiety and it was like, felt like someone had come into my house and robbed me.
Totally.
And then having to fix that. But in the deep, once like the anxiety like subsided and I, had a solution to it, it was this really deep sense of detachment to the hustle and the need to, grow and stuff, because it was like, just like that, a stranger has my card details and it's emptied.
And it's all gone.
Of dollars, And it was this realization of being like, I have a roof over my head. I'm in a loving relationship. We've got beautiful market produce. It does not matter, And it was like those hard moments where it gets taken away, but it's like, it was really, I haven't really spoken about it because I'm like,
well, I think this is a beautiful journey that you've gone through there. Mm-hmm. And I think it's like so important for you as well, because it's like never feel like you're ever alone thinking that you are the only person that thinks like this too, because it's not the truth. Like every creative does, I do, everyone does. And you go through situations where you start thinking, is it worth it? What am I doing? Like, I'm not even making money. There's no money coming in. We all go through that same thing and it's a big cycle. And then when we get in line with ourselves again, with those goals again, and we have clarity, because if you don't have clarity, man, I reckon that is the killer of all businesses, not money. It's clarity.
Yeah.
If you're feeling overwhelmed and you got no direction, like you will get nowhere, right? But the second that you've probably walked around, had that realization, and then you're like, oh, I'm ready again. I'm ready to do something because I feel like I know my purpose.
Yeah, and it's like almost that the breaking of this shock of, the reality of the world we live in. Can
I quickly just show you something here too? Like I think a lot of us, we try and find, for instance, we try and find motivation by listening to a book, reading a book, getting on someone's Instagram account and seeing if they're going to motivate me or something. But a lot of the times there's lessons to be learnt in everything. And sometimes for you to have a jolt, kind of like if you were having, if you were on the operating table and it had to actually put some electricity for you to jolt your heart back on, sometimes you need to fail or you need to make mistakes for you to realize what was actually going wrong and where you need to go. And so if there's a life lesson in everything, I always look at that. I'm like, where's the lesson in this? I'm like, oh my God, I just learned something that I wouldn't have learned if I succeeded.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. It's like the best lessons are learned in the hardest time, because you're forced to stop and go, what's going wrong here? I'm in physical pain or discomfort. I have to fix this. It's like if our body was aching, we'd go to the doctor and pay attention to it, but if your arm's not aching, most of the time you're not even aware of your arm, and how
exactly.
It works. And it's that interesting idea of, and I think I try to see it in everyday stuff, of like, I guess through a bit of a calmer lens, of everything is feedback, and it's also everything is a reflection of what you're putting out and what you're allowing. So, if you're feeling drained of energy, it's like, well, what have you put in your body today? Like, has it been all coffee or has it been a proper meal? So you're always getting information. It's just whether you're aware enough to stop and receive it and keep learning from it.
Yeah, or if the information is important enough or loud enough for you to actually hear it,
Yeah.
Because it could be that same problem over and over, but until that point happened for you, then you're like, I hear you now.
And I think that's like, I think I really like that you bring that up in everyday stuff, because it's like, you're again, back to your journey, there is lessons in every single moment. And I think getting better at noticing them and tweaking on the go rather than waiting for the crisis moments,
Yeah. And I think more of us, especially creative entrepreneurs, we need to harness realizing every day is a lesson, and then getting obsessed with learning, because then you get obsessed. If you're obsessed with learning, right? Like most people for some reason think they're obsessed with succeeding. And then they say, well, Jai, how are you happy with failing? I'm like, well, I'm obsessed with learning. And when you learn, it's trial and error. Like I'm like, oh, that one worked, that one didn't, that one worked. But after all this, I'm like, oh my God, I'm gaining so much knowledge and experience and connections and network and, so many things. And I'm like, to me, I only succeed because even when it looks like I'm failing and then I've got no money and I'm backed in the corner, I'm like, I needed that right now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think that's, again, it's like, your definition of success was trialing and failing and being scared enough. So it's like you're actually succeeding.
Exactly. I'm like, this is amazing.
Still giving it a crack, I love that. Hey, on to that point around, I guess, you mentioned your partner and getting a studio, but like how do you navigate? I think we were going to touch on this last time, but what's your relationship like in how that plays out with, I guess, like your balance as a couple, but also, both being creatives and striving to goals and, how do you, that support?
I think, well, there's so many different ways that we need to, like, we can think of this and unwrap this. And I think just to start off with a misconception, I think a lot of people look at someone that's their successful self, right? And it's like, if I'm going to be a successful painter, I need to work, 100 hours a week just painting and then let go of my relationships. And that's what life looks like because you just got to hustle. But I think it's not like that at all. And something that you brought up is like my life and my business and everything is all just my journey. It's just my life and it's all mixed and intertwined, which means I have big goals, big crazy goals for my business. I always do. I have big crazy goals for my life. I do. I love learning new stuff. I have big goals for my relationships. So I think about that. I have to put the same amount of effort into, if I'm making my business amazing, I've got to do the same thing with my partner. I've got to do the same thing with my friends and everyone else, which means if I'm at work, I'm here and I'm working, I'm hustling. And then if I'm like finishing early, I'm not sitting on Facebook. I'm like, all right, I'm going to go home. When I get home, I'm like, okay, I'm here. I'm going to cook a meal with you. Let's talk about what we've done. Let's do whatever we need to do to make sure that we're spending quality time together because that's important to me. So often we get it stuck in a trap and we start saying like, sorry, babe, I'm too busy. I'm just going to watch Netflix because I had a bad day or, I'm sorry, babe, but this. Or we're saying like, and sometimes, I find myself like, sorry, mom, I'm too busy right now. Like, can I call you back some other time? And I'm not too busy. I actually have lots of time, I might seem like I'm busy, but what I do is I just prioritize. So I'm saying to my mom, I don't prioritize you over what I'm doing right now. And so you're less on that ladder. So I'll get back to you once I go through these things. And so with our relationship, I can never say to Lulu, like if she said today, Jai, can you drive me into the city because I need to go do something? And I'm sitting here and I'm like, oh, I've got a podcast episode and other things. I better cancel them because that is my number one priority right now, so you got to make sure those words that we say, like I'm too busy, you're just saying, I don't value our time right now over what I'm going to do, like watching Netflix or doing something else.
Yeah.
So we got to be proactive around it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's the, it's almost like the same thing with time, right? Is like, when people are like, there's not enough time. It's like, no, there's time. It's like, not enough. Not enough time and not enough money, not enough, resources. It's about what you put the most value on. It's like it's back to that book that I'm reading. I think you'd like it. It's he was saying something about the other day, which made a lot of sense because I've my family, we have different styles of eating habits and style, I don't mind a fancy champagne and, taking to myself to a nice dinner. Whereas they, will happily just shop at the local grocer and, just different how we do our lives, which I used to come home and be like, you need to, eat this amazing sourdough. And they're like, no, thanks. I just want white bread. And I'm like, okay. And so I let go of needing to do that. And it's like, I look at my siblings who all have kids as well, which is different. But, it's like what they prioritize is their kids and their kids' sport and a family holiday and things like that. And, is a not someone who doesn't have kids and, lives in a city. It's like what I value is, a
completely different
and stuff. Yeah. But it's like, because that's my value. And so it actually, the author of this book, I'll find it and let everyone know. But was talking about, it's like, it's not that you don't have enough money, it's what you value. And it's like when we actually get to that point where we're like, I'm exchanging this money because this is it's a representation of something that I value, then you never have that spending anxiety because you're actually aligning your time and your money and your resources to something that you're like, yeah, I'm so happy to invest in that, because I have these results, it's something that I value.
Just like going off the back of that, like a lot of the times when someone says like, hey man, I can't afford this. I can't afford to eat there. I can't afford to go and look after myself. I can't afford whatever. It's also, you got to remember, it's you valuing yourself. Like, what do you think? Like, I know so many people that they value their car over themselves. And the way that looks is they'll go, I can't afford to eat at a fancy restaurant. And then they pull up at a gas station. They'll get the premium unleaded and they'll add some extra stuff in there, really expensive. And then they'll walk into McDonald's and get a $3 burger and feed themselves with the shittest fuel and feed their car with the best fuel. And then now they can't afford themselves, right? So we all do value things differently. But one huge thing is, part of society, is we undervalue ourselves. Like we don't put the right value on ourselves.
Yeah. And I think that's like coming back to, what's important for you? What's your life path? What do you want to be creating and investing in? And then it's like, again, back to that motivation thing. It's less about lack and time and all of these things and more about, that's when life gets into flow and things feel easy and you're feeling like you've got enough and, you're inspired and you're overachieving and all these things because you're in that alignment with your value system, which just takes time, right?
It takes time
to find what's right. But and
it's a continuous thing too. Like we're always looking for our own values and it changes.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's where you've coming to zoom out. That's a good question for you actually coming into that, because I know you've built a team. I think last time we chatted, I think you had who's the guy that was doing photography, drawing stuff with you? Morgan, there he is. And then and I think you had somebody else who was helping you out with socials and stuff on a shoot. But you seem to have grown. Tell us about your team now and how much that comes into. Are they all listening?
It's really fun having a team. So I know, like, there's
You're
a few.
You're saying that because they're there.
Oh yeah, no, I hate them. They know I'm talking about them. They don't know what I'm saying though. No, I think it's really fun to have a team. Like, look, I think like running after your goals and doing business and stuff, it's fucking boring by yourself, I think. Like for me, like I think bigger than myself. I want to do bigger things. I want to provide opportunities. I want to bring people into an ecosystem where we can all work together and we can all flourish and it all works. Like I think it's all amazing. You know that you need to hire someone when you get to a point where you have so many ideas and like years and years worth of work and you can't do it all by yourself and you want some partners in life as well. And then I think it's time to go like, I think I should bring someone in. I can't afford it. Every time I've hired someone new, I can't afford it. But I know I can't afford not to hire them because if I don't hire them, I'll never be able to afford it. I can't buy back my time. I can't bring in, a new element to my business or get something to strengthen or get better or bring in more ideas. But the cool thing about hiring people is you can literally become a superpower because you just hire people that are smarter than you, more creative than you, more educated than you, they're more driven than you. Like you can find people in any element, right? So for me, being the ghetto kid that I am, like I didn't go to university, but I can hire an architect, and they went to university for 4 years and then I could start an architect firm if I wanted to, right? So I think about that and I'm like, I can literally, like so many people have dedicated their lives to their craft and whatever it is that they do and they perfect it. And then in my business, I'm like, well, I can leverage all that. And I think that's an amazing thing to do. And then as a business, you can grow it all together and everyone's involved in it.
Yeah, I think leverage is one of those, like a lot of business, I learned this very early on is like, how do you grow and expand and build wealth? And leverage is one of the keys to that. I think it's like investing as well and then business. But leverage is that idea of like you don't have to have it all or do it all. But and how do you decide what role to hire? Well,
one of the reasons, or one of the ways, there's two different ways actually. One is I work out what I'm doing that I would make more money if I didn't do it. So I work out my hourly rate, and then if I could hire someone to do that job. Now, for instance, on a Saturday, if I could hire someone to mow my lawn for $30 and it takes me an hour, then it's a clear choice to hire someone to do it, because in that hour, well, because I'm worth about $500, I could either go and do something, sell something. I could do a mentor session while my lawn's getting mowed and I would have a lot of change, or I could protect myself, and so I could work harder during the week. So I would never go and mow my lawn for $30 because I'm like, what the hell am I doing? You know, I've said this before, like, so many people say, I can't afford Uber Eats. It's like, man, you're paying someone $5 to walk down the road for you, and then to be on their bike, riding up, and they got a bike and everything. Like, I'll pay $5. I'll pay $20 to get someone to do that. Because for me, it's not worth my time and energy to be wasting doing something like that on a low value task. And it makes me think really small, because if I'm thinking I need to save $5, then I'm thinking so small that I could never grow a business, right? I'm thinking big right now.
Well, it almost goes back to that values conversation, right? Is because you value your time.
Yeah, I value myself and my time.
What you're actually exchanging the $5 Uber Eats delivery fee for is 5 minutes of being able to stay in focus, not have to get up from your desk if you don't need to think about food. You're saving cognitive load by picking something quickly, having it there. You know, you can stay in focus. So you're actually exchanging $5 for, you know, staying in your workflow and whatever.
And that's an amazing deal to me. So that's the way I think with everything, right? Yeah. Like I'm thinking if I just paid $5 for that, I'm like, oh my God, I can't believe it's so cheap, is what I think. When someone else complains, oh, it's $25 to get Uber Eats. I can't believe it's so cheap.
Yep. Yeah.
Insane.
What was that? Where did we start that conversation? Oh, building the team. So obviously, hiring that time. How has it been, you know, being a big dreamer and a big thinker and, you know, taking people on that ride with you? And, you know, obviously you take big risks and you do, you know, the next ideas and stuff. What's your kind of strategy or tips for people at home around building that team and taking them on the journey and getting them motivated towards your goals? And,
there's a few different things.
Do that as somebody who's probably, you know, the entrepreneur at the front running the show and probably would run 10 times faster.
Yeah, there's a few different things. Like one thing is like, make no mistake, it's really hard. And I know so many people, they hire one person, it was too hard, it wasn't the right fit, and then they sort of give up on it and go, no, that's it. So it is really hard. You got to put in the work and the effort. And then it's the same as any relationship. You have to put the work and effort in. You got to understand everybody. You got to see what everybody values. So you got to bring something to the table. You got to realize that you got to work for them, not so much they work for you. So you need to bring, you know, you got to make sure everyone has the resources and has the things that they need to do the job that they have in front of them at the highest level, because otherwise it's costing you money. And also then you're just not thriving, you know? So it's a few things like that. Yeah, I've got to say it's not easy to hire people, but it's really important for you to grow, because you can't, there is no big business on the planet that's a one-man show. There is none. And as much as so many people think that they could do it, like you're just thinking so small. Like I just can't see how you could do all the things, like all the things I do, I couldn't do it. And I want to grow even further, and I'd love to have more people, and I'd love to fill more gaps of things that we need. You know, we need designer and we need other things, so everyone can work even better together. But yeah, it's to get people motivated, I think you need to be transparent, and I think you need to like always be transparent with your team, and you always need to have their best interests at heart. Because if you can do that and you actually honestly want everyone to level up with you, you're not trying to hold people down, then people will show up for you.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah. Great advice. How do you go about multitasking? I know you've got lots on the go all the time, but splitting, you know, your energy between building a house and running a studio and I don't know, you can tell us what else you've got on your plate, and then how do you go about managing your time and focus and breaking up? Obviously all of those things need your attention on some levels. I've actually listened to a podcast recently and it was with David Byrne, the singer, and he was in conversation with a director, I think it was, and they were talking about, you know, these big time guys And they're like, I have to carve out time to be creative, but, then I have to go and do emails. And I was like, oh my God, that's the most relatable thing I've heard of David Byrne being like, I still have to, it's like you can outsource so much, but at the end of the day, there's certain things
still
that
gotta do shit you gotta do.
need you. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's very relevant right now because we've been multitasking a lot of things between doing a launch and building a house and working on No Skin, like doing so many different things. I'm on my podcast a lot. I do a lot of social media. I do a lot of things. You sort of have to let go of the notion of like you have one job. Oh, hello, little buddy. Got a little dog here. So like the notion of come here. Say hello. There we go. I don't know if you see a little dog. You got to let go of the notion of like, we've got to think that everything should be separated. And I think when you sort of combine things, it works well. So I really do blocks of everything, but I don't go like, oh, on this one day, I'm going to work on that one business. And then the next day I'm going to work on that house. I just go like, what needs my attention the most now? And then how much time can I give it? Block it out so I'm not multitasking. So then I do one task on that one thing. And then I work my way down the list and go, what's the next thing that needs my attention right now? And I plan way ahead as well. Like I always plan my weeks out like on Sunday before I get into work. I generally plan out my months, but then I know each week I'm like, so I know on Thursday I should do this. I should block out some time to do some podcasts, do some reels and stuff. On Friday, I really need to fly up and go look at my house and talk to the builders and stuff. And so, yeah, it's very much just like ebbs and flows and stuff's going on all over the place and barely holding it all together and having breakdowns.
What's your strategy for a breakdown when that hits for you? How do you pick yourself up, or what's your kind of
my strategy is I just get real moody and angry at everyone, and then I say sorry, and then I have a day off, and then I reflect on it, and then I'm good to go again. So that's my strategy.
It's good that you give yourself days off.
Yeah.
It makes a difference. It gives you that reset. I think that's like back to that kind of time blocking and stuff. And it's like, I think I don't know, I think we're similar in the sense of like having lots of different projects and styles of working. For me, it's like podcasting, coaching, hosting events, creating content, all those things. And learning too. I love to like read and carve out time for that. And it's about, it's always going to be changing. And like, it's almost, I think, what keeps me excited because, the thing I hated most about a 9-to-5 was sitting at a desk and doing the same thing over and over again. But that idea of blocking out, and I think it's kind of just as a tip for people at home, I think it's, you looking at what is the priority, because sometimes, maybe there's floods up, in where your house is. And it's like, okay, all of a sudden the house is, I had all these things, but the house is now top priority. So that actually, we need to shuffle that up, So it's like, and I always think, and I don't know how you do your to-do list and stuff, but I always look at mine and like, I've got my big goals on the wall, and then I've got my to-do list in front of me, and everything on my to-do list should be a step towards the big goals up there, and so it's like there's a reason why it's on the list and not just there because,
Totally. You want to make an impact of all your time. And one thing, I guess, just talking about time, is I spend at least 1 hour on myself every day. So I know I've talked about that with you before, but like, it's a non-negotiable. If I have to wake up an hour early, like so many people tell me, Jai, you can't go for a walk for an hour if you've got kids. I'm like, you can if you prioritized it, because I know people that do it. You can wake up an hour earlier. You could probably have a nap in the middle of the day if you needed to, like whatever you need to do. But if you don't, then you're a strung out parent for your kids all the time because you're stressed and, things not going right and everything. So you always have to put your own mask on before you can help other people. And in business, especially if you've got a team, like it's so important to do that, because if you look after yourself, you give yourself that time, like learn something, read a book, listen to a podcast, whatever it is, then you're going to happily show it for everyone else because you've already filled your cup.
Yeah, I love that. I'm all for the morning routine.
Yeah.
Because my partner complimented me the other day. We had a 8 a.m. flight, which means like, airports are crazy. I think I was up at 5, but like like planned the morning that I still had time to get ready for the airport and sit and have my coffee. I was like,
that's perfect.
Doesn't matter. Like, I hate rushing out the door.
I know, because it sets the tone for the rest of your day.
It's chaos.
Yeah.
Never. Hey, I just had a thought then when you were talking about getting up and having that time, and I know you like to go for a walk and watch the sunrise, which made me think of, remember Clubhouse?
Yeah.
Are you still on it?
I've got the app, but I've jumped on a couple of times, but there's not many people that I know that are on it, but I know there's a lot of people on it, and I know
there is.
Yeah.
Interesting, isn't it? Because what it made me think of, which would be keen to get your advice or take or how you're approaching it, it just made me think of trends, and when Clubhouse happened, it was like, you got to have the invitation and you got to get on, and you were on there every day having discussions. I know that we had input, and it was like, riding that wave for a bit. Interesting to watch it die down, at least here in Australia. I'm not sure, maybe around the world, maybe in the States it's a little bit more, but you think, I'm going to look this up today because I reckon they raised a lot of money, and for how quickly they took a dip compared to Instagram and Facebook are still everyday parts of our life.
Going for it, yeah.
But what's your kind of take on trends and things coming and going? And I guess, I don't know, I saw on Instagram the other day you posting about limited reach on your account, which I think a lot of people are experiencing. But what's your kind of headspace and how are you tackling it? Or what's your advice to people at home who might be getting really caught up in that, or, trying to figure it out or worried about it?
I've got some good advice, especially for Clubhouse. I think a lot of people don't want to jump on a new platform like that because they're worried that it might be a trend and it might disappear. But the thing is, like, if I jumped on there and I did, like, every day, the thing is, from those connections, like, I've met so many different people. And then I know people that have got on there and then they got a book deal from it because they were in the same room as someone else. They learned a bunch of things. They made more connections. They expanded the network, and which means they expanded their net worth. They made more money. They sold more courses. Like, so many things happen. So often we think something needs to be there forever for it to make sense, but it's not. It's like, you need to be where the people are all the time. And whether that's on a fleeting platform, it doesn't matter. Like, you need to be there. That's to me is the mindset you got to have with all these platforms. Like, Instagram might go tomorrow as well. And it's not like I'm going to be going, oh my God, I can't believe Instagram's gone. It sucks. I'm like, oh, no, it doesn't, man. I just made so many connections. Like, I made a big business from it. I've done so many things. Like, that's what it was there for. I used it, and so make sure we do use it.
Yeah, for sure. And I think is like, also, I guess the angle I was coming from, but also great points, is interesting how something that could, I think Elon Musk was on there at some point, and huge. It had all the big names, was raising lots of money, was the talk of the town. Everybody jumped on it, and then how quickly that can, it's like almost like actually things don't last forever, and the relevance of stuff.
They don't. Hey.
Yeah, and it's like, even if you've got all the money behind you and the people, like, I would say there's a heap of people who've deleted the app after the first few months of hype.
Yeah, and I think there's going to be a lot of things that come like that, and a lot of our projects work like that. I let go of projects and courses and things all the time based on just me going, oh, okay, that was actually a bad idea, and just accepting that. But hey, if we run our lives based on thinking about the things that didn't work out, like these apps or other things, that's the environment that starts the fear, because then we start thinking, well, maybe it won't work out for me, or maybe I shouldn't waste my time on something. But really, if you start looking at the opposite, it's like, well, you need to do that to get to your next app that you haven't even thought of yet. So there's one thing. But then spending your time on a platform like that, you need that for the connections. And of course, everything's going to disappear, but that's okay. We can pivot and change. And I know you wanted to ask me about pivoting and when's a good time. Every day you need to pivot. Every day. That's business, right? And so I think so many people die in business because they don't pivot their business every day. But every decision, you need to think about it, and you need to be nimble enough to change it, because if that just didn't work out, change it, adapt, go different, go bigger, go smaller, like do whatever you need to do. And that is business. Yeah,
big time. And it goes back to that thing about feedback, right? Pivoting is just listening to the feedback and adjusting as you go.
Yeah.
So that's good advice.
I mean, imagine if someone wasn't pivoting every day. Like, that's going to be a business that's going to slowly die.
I actually had somebody inquired about my productivity coaching the other day, and I, got my email that I sent back. I'm like, this is how it's worked, and blah blah blah, and they wrote back and were like, yeah, this was, just gave their thing and said, but I'll come back at another time or whatever. And the reasoning around of being like, not now's not the right time, I was like, oh, hang on. Like in my head, I was like, oh, of course we're going to touch on your business. The whole thing is about being productive in your business. And for me, it was just that opportunity to be like, I haven't properly communicated that.
Yeah,
so
totally, straight away.
Actually given me copy for my website and my email in order to tweak my messaging, and it's like not getting caught up in like that person.
What a gift, huh?
Didn't convert. It's that person actually is just giving me information to make my messaging better,
You know what's really amazing too is literally the words that they say is what should be on your sales page and email. Like, so you're just going, oh, you're right. I can't believe I didn't touch on that point, and I can't believe you were confused about that point. So check out my sales page now.
Yeah. Look at me now.
Yeah.
Hey, what's your kind of take on socials and, engagement and being limited and having, people being anxious about all that?
Hey, so I think with social media, engagement is pretty low. Like we know engagement is pretty low. But there is one big rule of thumb, and I'm realizing this right now. Like I'm just testing some stuff right now, and I've known this like since the start of Instagram, basically. I think a lot of people rely too much on the algorithm, and they think it's the algorithm's fault, and they don't look inwards and realize they're making shit content. And so that's the actual truth of everything. So every time someone's told me it's the algorithm, look at my content. I've been posting the same stuff for 3 years. It used to get a lot. Now it doesn't. And I look at it, I'm like, yeah, it would have been good 3 years ago. It's not good now. Or they'll show me their stuff and I go, yeah, like this should have went viral. My last one did. I'm like, well, your last video was good though. Like there was a good hook in it and there was a good call to action and it was like 7 seconds long and it was like trending music. This one here is like 1 hour long, whatever. Sorry, I got an alarm going off. Yeah. So for us, I think we need to think less about the platform, whatever platform it is, because all platforms work the same. And we need to start working on the strategy for our own content, creating content that we would enjoy and we would like. Because if we do that, for instance, like Kate, like with your content, like if you just started doing like little videos like this and you're just talking to me just like this, and I'm like, oh my God, like, we're friends. This is cool. Yeah. And you started posting that. It's different to anything you've ever posted before. But all of a sudden you'd break the algorithm because everyone would think the way I'm thinking because you're thinking the same. So if we start thinking that, like what stuff could I make right now that's going to be funny for my friends or inspiring for my coworkers or, they're going to save this, they're going to share this, or they'll comment on this because it's controversial or whatever it is, then you've got good content.
Yeah. No, I 100% agree. And I think there's times where I'm just like, I'm like in my head, I'm like, whenever I'd scroll past that as well.
Yeah, exactly.
I've actually done it. I've like swiped past my own content from my personal account and like Startup Creative will come past. I'm like, no, it's still, and in my head, it's right now, it's not a huge priority or a value for me, so
totally.
Like, when that time comes, there's those chances to, I know that I should and can, but there's plenty of other things going on, which has also been a nice lesson for me too. Yeah.
Well, it's a lesson for me as well. And like, we all go through this. Like I sit here and I'm like, I say this on my high horse and I'm like, man, that last podcast episode that I made, it wasn't the best. And then I expect people to have good download rates and everyone to share it and reviews and stuff. But I'm like, would I? I wouldn't. And then so I always got to reflect on myself. It's not the platform, man. It's the message. And the messaging wasn't strong, dude. Get better at your message is what I think to myself.
There's two things to this, which I was chatting about with somebody the other day. Is one that I know for me, when I have felt inspired and I've got something cut through to say that's like, a real emotive and it's relates, all of those things that I sit down, I'm like, I need to share this message. It doesn't matter what time of day I put. Doesn't matter. I put it out. It doesn't matter if I used hashtags or whatever.
Nope. Or how good it looks.
The message actually cuts through. And I was trying to remember, I think Grace, someone who was this young, she put up, I remember figuring this out years ago. She was on some American Idol or something like that. Her first ever video, and there's so many stories like this now, but like was this backyard that was like kind of gray and like this kind of, nothing special about it. She's sitting on this kind of wooden porch, like, and she's got a ukulele and she's a stalky little 12-year-old and she just sings into the YouTube and puts it up on YouTube. Like huge deal now. And I remember watching that because I went on a spiral of who was this girl and being like, that's the perfect example of it. That is not a beautiful curated anything to that. She didn't have a home studio. No one was trying to make her famous. She just created something that was beautiful and authentic, and it went viral,
See, and the algorithm won't stop her. You know what I mean? You can break the algorithm. Like, for instance, on my stories, like I'm getting limited to 1,000 people. What I've worked is, if I make something shareable, it breaks it because it has to. Because if more than 1,000 people share it, more than 1,000 people seen it. And then I'm like, well, I just need to make more viral content. Like I need better messaging. And I realize I can break the algorithm and we can all do that.
Yeah, it cuts through for sure. I think the other thing that's, I guess for me, there's in that time of like really contemplating my business and stuff as well. I was reminded through friends that I reached out to get an insight into was what you're seeing on socials is like 1/10 of what the hell's going on in the background. Like I'm writing courses and I'm speaking at events and I'm advising, and I'm doing interviews and, all of these different things. And that reminder of like, it actually completely hides my anxiety, goes down because it's like I've actually diversifying stuff that doesn't belong or need to be, or I don't have time to put it on socials and update people that way. I'll be there and I'll contribute. And when, I can probably need to hire somebody.
Also, you've got so many things going on in your life, right? And you say so many things that like interest me. And I know you don't share too much about it, but like, let's just like, if we got out a whiteboard and we wrote down some stories that you have in your life. Okay. So one is you're in a same-sex relationship. Another one is you go through anxiety. Another one is you're just talking about you were just broke like a week ago. So I can start like writing down all these super interesting things about your life. And then from there we could go, okay, well, what story do we want to share on that? Because how is that going to help a lot of people? And if you started making some content around all the stories, because it's your stories, it's not made up, and this is your life, that's fucking interesting stuff. Because there's people out there that are just going like, oh my God, I'm going through the same thing. I went through the same thing. I'm about to go through the same thing. I fully relate. I don't relate, but I love this, whatever it is. But that's the content for us that we need to keep sharing. Because if we share everyone else's content all the time, in the sense of like myself, I mean, this is big right now on Reels. Like, it's like use the same trend song that everyone else is doing, do the same dances everyone else is doing, and then you'll get put into the playlist with everybody else. That's all good and everything. And that won't last forever. But if you actually share what you do and what you're like, man, it will last forever. It actually will.
Yeah. And
people will follow you across platforms.
Yeah. And it's interesting. Yeah. It's interesting. And it's not the norm and it can't be replicated, Yeah. And I think that for those at home too, it's like if you find yourself with all your eggs in the Instagram basket, then take a minute to be like, where else are you collecting an audience, or where else are you sharing and
where's all the people?
And getting in front of more people that maybe isn't just all Instagram. Cool. Okay. Final question for you. What do you say yes and no to, and how do you determine it, and what do you say more of?
This one's a really good question.
It's up then, but well, before.
Well, it's a really good question because I think one thing is so many people tell you to stop saying yes to everything. But I just want to give a word of warning to the people that are listening to those people, because most people that say that have never said yes enough. And that's one thing that I've noticed. It's like, I have friends that go like, don't try, say yes to everything. Don't say yes. Also, I've got no work and I've got no connections and I don't have a successful business and stuff. I'm like, yeah, because you're telling me to say no, but you haven't even said yes enough. Like there's not many people I know on this planet that has said yes too much and they've exhausted it and they should start saying no. So that's like one thing. The second thing is like saying no, you got to remember the yes and no thing. We need to start working out of like, does this get you closer to your goal? Because if you wrote your goals down today, and if that yes is a clear yes to your goal and it's going to get you faster there than if you did anything else, then that should be the priority of the list. Like, yes, I will do that. For instance, Kay, if you said, hey, Jai, can we come and have a coffee? Can we be on a podcast today? I'm like, yes. I'm going to wipe everything else off. I'm saying yes to this because this is going to get me actually faster to my goal, reach more people. I can talk to more people, better relationship here. This ticks more boxes on my thing than the emails I was going to do, not prior to this. Does that make sense? So that for me is like a clear yes. And then a clear no is just straight up of like, does that get me closer to my goal? It doesn't. Well, then, sorry, no, too busy. But Jai, don't you want the money? Don't need the money. Don't you want this? Don't need it. Sorry.
Fall back to the values, right? Like, what are you working towards? What's on the to-do list? What's the outcome of that on the to-do list? And as you were saying then, because I think when you were like, say yes to everything, I was just like, oh my God, like that's like overwhelming.
Yeah, there's terms and conditions to it.
Yeah, but I remember what I think then the next thought was like, you end up, if you say yes, like, so let's say you start at point A and you're like, I want to get B, then C, and you're kind of jumping up the steps. Say as yes to as many things in point A, and then you've exhausted, you kind of become, outgrow it, and then you jump into the big pool and then you start saying yes to those things. And I think it reminded me of that realization of like, you eventually start saying yes to bigger things and no.
Well, that's the thing. It's easy for us to think that we're just going to say yes to all the shit things all the time. It's not actually how it all works though, because people ask me stuff all the time and I don't realize I say no, but it's just not on my radar anymore. But I do say yes to every opportunity, even if I look at it and I go, oh, okay. Let's just say, for instance, someone says, Jai, can you be on my podcast? I only get like 100 listeners per episode. I'm like, yes, I can. Like, oh, why would you do that? Well, for me, I'm reaching 100 people. There's new people, there's new connection. Also, your podcast might blow up and I'm going to be on the first one. So I'm going to say yes to that. Where I know most people that I know would always value something and go like, no, for that, because you're just wasting my time. I'm going to just do the emails and whatever. And it's one of the reasons why I feel like my career, I can get so far ahead because I fill my calendar with so many things that other people wouldn't do, because I work like no one else would work. While everyone else is asleep like they're rich, I'm awake like I'm Paul, and I'm doing the things that they wouldn't do, and I think that's so important.
Well, I think it's like one of your goals, like you look at your goal list and it's like, I want to reach more people, right? So if somebody comes and says, I want to be in front of these people and I want to be considered an expert, being on a podcast as an expert is a status. It goes out into the internet as another listing. They're featuring your name. They're going to go out and promote it and get as many listeners as they can. It's free. Someone's out working on your behalf to promote you,
Yeah, it's all yeses from me on that one.
And it's like, and if people, if reaching more people and actually just better serving or, your current existing audience is of value or what's on your to-do list, then you might be like, no, I'm out here serving my maybe 10 high-paying customers,
Exactly. And so I mean, just to put another spin on it, it's like if I got contact for that 100-person podcast, but also on the same day I was doing like a 500-person conference, I'm like, well, actually no, because I've got the thing that I'm doing today. It's a big thing. So, hey, if you want to push it to tomorrow morning, that's all right, whatever. But that's a clear no for me right now. So it's, you will always say yes or no based on your gut feeling and what's going to get you close to those goals. You got to be in line with those goals.
And I think a really good way for people to navigate that is I always ask myself, like, what's the return on the investment, for my time? And again, if you have that clear return for, whatever the exchange is, it might be exposure over cash and things like that, but based on and I think that's why I guess the whole the whole common theme of this podcast has been like how important it is to be really clear about where you're going, and have that vision and
how much are you willing to go after it. Like another thing here, Kay, is like people put the wrong value on things. So they will say, like, especially creatives, they go, oh, someone asked me to come and do this photo shoot for free. And then I really tore them up on social media because I was like, fuck you. I can't believe you don't value me. And I'm like, oh, have you got lots of work on? They're like, no, I've got no work. And I'm like, okay, well, the way that I work is I would look at something like I'd be shooting for free right now if I had no work. Like that's the first thing, because then I'm busy. The second thing is each client that I get, I'll be asking for a referral and a review. And I'll be like, hey, I can do this if you refer me onto one friend and give me a review. And then I know if I just showed up like that, let's just say I showed up like that for 6 months and I did 6 months worth of free shoots. I know by the end of the year, I'll have a 6-figure business. No doubt in my mind. I've done it before. And the reason being is because you can average out now. You didn't actually work for free. You actually got paid because the average value per person averaged out over the year. And you will hit big numbers if you had that many clients on your board and you had that much work coming in, opposed to sitting there going like, no one's valuing me. I don't even value myself, obviously, because I got no work.
Well, I think that's it. And a lot of creative industries, like, do the work before anyone pays you to. It's like we sit back and be like, hey, I'm really good at what I do. And it's like what you and I are doing right now, doing the work before, and we're not being paid to do this. We're paying to go and get this edited and pushed out. But we're actually, giving the advice for free. And that, there's someone out there who's like, oh, that sounds like my business coach, or what a course I'd like to do, or book you'd like to buy. So it's like, yeah, it's the same. It's like, and when you're doing it and being it, then that's how you build trust and attract the right people.
And you get better.
And I think, but you said that where you're like, well, if I do the shoot, I'm busy. And so you're being it, therefore you're more likely people, oh, you're a photographer, I didn't know.
Because new room, better than being in my lounge room.
Yeah. And no one knowing, because you're sitting back going, any minute now, someone's going to book me,
Well, one example, I think I shared this with you before, but like people might even look at you and myself and think we don't do nothing for free. But, in 2020, I wanted to be, to hit $1 million, and I started selling a course, like a coaching program. And one of the first things I did is I booked in around 50 people for our coaching for free. It's one of the first things I did. And everyone's like, whoa, you're getting further away from your goal. I'm like, no, I'm not, because I wasn't sitting there teaching anyway. So I'm not doing nothing with these 50 hours. So I went through, and yes, 45 of them were a waste of time on my sense, as in nothing came out of it. But 5 of them out of the 50 shared the hell out of it, got everyone to talk about it, got other people to book in actual paid mentoring, got people to buy my courses and stuff. And they're still in my courses now. And I'm like, geez, man, that was worth showing up for 50 people, right? And it wasn't like it was capped at a number. I was just doing it for anyone for free. It's like, yeah, let's jump on. I got 8 hours today. I remember one day I did 8-hour sessions back to back to back to back, hour, all for free. And I was so exhausted by the end. And at the end of it, I was like, I know something's going to come from that. Has to.
Right. And then it's also what you're also getting from that is you're honing your skill as a coach and you're getting real life
experience is just skyrocketing. Data. Yeah.
People are telling you, hey, this is what I need help with, which then becomes content that you create, so it's very rich in what else it has to give. And it's not always money. I
know. And if you probably see my social media, you probably see that I have a lot of reviews and a lot of success. Like, I mean, so many people, I would say like my course has probably got so much success in my industry. But one of the reasons being is because I literally show up for free for so many people too. Like, people will jump in the Facebook group and go, Jai, I'm struggling with this. I'm like, let's get on a half an hour call. Let's do it right now. And I'll do these things. And so that's what people don't see behind the scenes. But what they do see on the front of the scenes is people hitting huge success and then saying like, Jai and the team helped me with that, which we did. And then they share that. And then other people are like, oh, I want to be in on that, So it's like, hey, if you show up and you care for people, man, people are going to care for you as well. Yeah,
absolutely. And I think don't underestimate really, showing up for people and the human experience of being like, oh, couldn't have done it without you. That's such a deep trust building, authentic experience that, is so much better than a free download,
It is. Yeah. It's so much better.
Hey, thanks for coming on and sharing so much wisdom and giving some insight into where you're at and what you've done and what's next. What's on? Have you got a big?
Well, next I'm going to get published on Kaylene Langford's startup creative podcast, and then some people are going to reach out to me on social media, which is going to be cool. Oh, well, I got a DM on Instagram and I said yes.
It happen.
I don't know what's up next. Up next is just like getting, I'm at a stage where I'm trying to scale my business a bit now. So it's a completely new world that I don't understand. So everything's really scary for me and everything is uncomfortable, and I'm really enjoying that. I'm more uncomfortable and working harder than I ever have before, which is pretty amazing. You'd think the opposite would happen, but it doesn't. And yeah, I think for me, just, honestly, like living my best life and seeing what it's like to be a human and doing the things that I do.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Congratulations. Love to catch up as always and hear your tips. And yeah, thanks for being here.
Yeah, thanks for having me on the show so many times. It's like I need to go back through and listen to everything because it's such a journey. It's almost like every year now. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I think we started on yours years ago and then we've just bounced. So
Evolved,
it's nice to have those people that you check in with and just bounce ideas, especially other coaches. So, hey, where can people find you before we head off?
Yeah, if you want to come and find me, you can come and find me on my podcast. It's called Make Your Break. Kay's been on there as well, and she'll be on there in the future as well. Mm-hmm. Make Your Break is the best place. And then my Instagram is just at jailong.co.co. So jailong.co. That's it.
And
you can say hi.
Jai.
jailong.co. Come and say hi. Do it.
Come say hi. Thanks for being here, Jai. Have an awesome weekend.
Thanks for having me.